Okay, let us begin our study for this morning. The lesson will be coming from chapter 7, Jacob and Esau. The text is Genesis 23 through 28 for this lesson, this entire lesson. What we're on right now is page 15. Page 15. Last week we finished up questions 12 and 13, which was the selling of the birthright. And now we will move on towards Isaac and Gerar and Beersheba, which is Genesis 26 verses 1 through 35. Actually, no, sorry. We finished those questions as well. Now we're in Genesis chapter 27 verses 1 through 40. Genesis 27, 1 through 40. And last week, what we talked about, which we need to make sure we fully understand, is there was two different instances between Jacob and Esau in this. One was deception that involved Isaac, and the other was the selling of the birthright. So the selling of the birthright was for the soup, and then the deception was over Isaac's blessing, right? So the deception involved a few more people. The selling of the birthright was between Jacob and Esau. So 27 is the actual encounter that involves the father and the mother. So let's look at that. Chapter 27, verses 1 through 40 captures the biblical text of where we are. But let's look at some of these questions. First question, number 20. Summarize how Jacob obtained the blessing intended for Esau. What happened here? This isn't the soup part. This is with the father. What happened?
Jacob was like their mom, right? Favored Esau kind of a little more, and then she planted this idea in his head to like lie.
Other way. The mom favored Jacob.
Yeah.
The father favored Esau. Okay.
Planted this idea in his mind to like, well, he can't see very well, so
Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. The first thing was the father called Esau into him to give the blessing, right? And said to go get him some game, which meant go hunt, because he knows that Esau is a hunter. He likes that food that Esau would have made for him. That was some of his favorite food. So that was the instruction so that he would be able to get his blessing and proceed with his birthright, right? Then the mother overheard these things, right? Mother overheard these things and got her favorite son, which was Jacob, and told him that since she knows how to prepare the food that he likes, bring the food so he can get the blessing. Then what did Jacob say to the mother? What question did he have at first, right? He said, if the father touches him, what will happen? Yeah, I'm smooth. So if he touches me, how will then he'll know that I'm Jacob and not Esau. So the mother said, don't worry about it. The mother went and got some um fur from, I believe, a goat. Yep, put it on Jacob and proceeded, right? Verse 17, gave the savory food to her son Jacob. Verse 18, Jacob went to the father and said, my father. He said, here I am. Who are you, my son? I'm Esau, right? But Isaac said what to him? What was the first thing? Because Isaac might be blind, but he's not stupid. What was the first thing he said? Hey, how you are a good hunter, but how'd you catch that food so fast? That was the first thing, right? Um, and then Jacob said, yep, Jacob said, because the Lord, your God brought it to me. So now he's involving God in this lie. Then Isaac said, come near, let me feel you if you're Esau or not, right? Because why? Verse 22. When Jacob got close to Isaac, what did Isaac say to him? That was confusing Isaac.
This is Jacob's, because you're the father. You can tell, even if you're blind, which will be your kid. So your voice sounds like his, but not really. So
Right.
you.
Right. So he said the voice is Jacob, but this feeling like Esau on the hands, right? So then they moved on. And then 24, he asked him plainly, are you really my son Esau? And he said, I am. So the lie just continued and continued, which was unfortunate, really. He brought God into the lie. The mother brought the son into the lie. And then he just kept lying. And once he asked him plain out, are you my son Esau? He lied and said that he was. And then he went on with the blessing. He left. Esau came in, and verse 32, father said, who are you? I'm your son Esau. Now the voice is matching. So verse 33, what did Isaac say? Read that for us, if you don't mind.
And Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed.
Okay, and then if you could read 34, 35, 36, 37, and 38.
When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, bless me also, O my father. But he said, your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing. And Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? And he has supplanted me 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now, look, he has taken away my blessing. And he said, have you not preserved your blessing for me? Then Isaac answered and said to Esau, indeed, I have made him your master, and all his brethren I have given to him as servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What shall I do now for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept.
Nope, that's it. Okay. Read for us verse 23 of chapter 25 really quick before we... Yeah, go ahead.
Like, why did he only have blessing? Like, I feel like if our dad had blessings, the things he would give David equal, you know?
Okay, so that goes back to last week. So Genesis 49:3. This is question 12 on this right there, question 12. Deuteronomy 21:17, 2 Chronicles 21:1-3, right? The instructions, especially from Deuteronomy 21:17, speak about marriage and offspring. Verse 17 of Deuteronomy 21 says, but he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as a firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. Then it's also mentioned in 2 Chronicles and Genesis. So the process was the firstborn was the one who received the blessing, and the blessing was monetary. The blessing meant that the land and all those sort of things were going to go to the firstborn. Now, Abraham gave his other sons some things, but those things aren't the blessing, right? Like, you may have $1 million. If you give me $1,000, I'll be happy. But I was looking for maybe half of the million. But it didn't work like that in this time, right? The firstborn was the one who received the blessing. And in this time, very different than today, people, when they made a vow, that was their word, was their bond, meaning we didn't have to sign a contract. You couldn't say, oh, this changed or that changed. Once you gave your word to something, that was your word. So Isaac was saying, I've already given my blessing away. I can't take it back and give to somebody else.
It was also like not physical blessings too, because when you read, like, it's like blessing his overall well-being too, not just monetarily. So he cannot just bless the other child.
Yeah, it's also instruction. So he's giving Jacob the authority over Esau. Like when Isaac passes away, Jacob now has the authority over Isaac. I mean, over Esau, and Jacob's descendants have authority over Esau's descendants. So that's why it's tough. Like in this day and age, we would do better of setting things up for parents to children before they pass. Because in this time, usually when people pass, phone call starts ringing and the daughter say, oh, dad always wanted to be buried like this. Then the son said, no, he didn't. He wanted this. Ooh, dad promised me he'd give me his car. No, he didn't. He promised he'd give it to my son. No, dad promised me his watch. Because all those promises, but where was the formalization? So in our time, we have what's called a will, where while you're alive, you say everything here. This goes to this person. This goes. Once somebody dies and the lawyer gets the will, it doesn't matter if you said, hey, even I have on tape. He said, I can have this. The lawyer going to say, look, he signed this thing. He gave to David. So that's our version of this right here. So it doesn't make total sense to us unless you're talking about like a corporation where a father was saying like, hey, when I die, my son is going to be CEO or my son is going to be head of the board of trustees, and not little things like this. It doesn't make that much sense to us. But in this time, you have to understand Isaac was as equivalent to a businessman. He was very wealthy. Plus, they were all living off of this extended promise that God made to Abraham. So their birthright and blessing was way bigger of a deal than other families. This was a big deal. So this is something that definitely affected the relationship between these two brothers. Okay, look at read for me Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. What does that say? Okay, so that was the foresight that God gave to Rebecca, right? So now the question, verse 21 is, which is sort of, I don't want to say a trick question, but kind of like a trick question. Because the question is saying, how would have Isaac's intention, if carried out, made God's plan void, right? So Isaac's intention was to give the blessing to who? Yeah, Esau, right? Rebecca's intention was to give the blessing to Jacob. So Isaac thought he was giving the blessing to Esau, but he didn't. In fact, he gave it to Jacob, right? So the question is, how would have Isaac's intention, if carried out, made God's plan void? If he really gave it to Esau, how would that have voided God's plan?
Why is my labor like so difficult right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's already because God has said, hey, two nations are in you, and the older shall serve the younger one. Like it was already said.
Mm-hmm.
And like Isaac just wanted to go with what he thought was the best. Like a tradition,
Right.
Said, so it was just the older ones going to give and get all the double the blessing.
Mm-hmm.
So he was probably that. It wouldn't make like void, like the plan. The plan was already there for the older ones.
Right. When you look at biblical things, this is where people who aren't strong in the word or confuse things will ask, hey, it seems like God is endorsing bad behavior. Look at Samson's life. Look at Moses's life, right? Or even Saul converted to Paul, right? If God would have told Saul's parents what Paul was going to do, and they said, no, he's not. He's going to be Saul and become a Pharisee. It still isn't going to change anything, right? God told Samson's parents that he would destroy the Philistine. God didn't make it where he would have to die to destroy the Philistines. Look at David's life. God anointed David as king as a boy, but he spent most of his 20s and 30s running. But God never said, I'm going to let Saul kill you and raise you from the dead. He said, you're going to be king. That was the promise, right? But what happens is life comes into play. And then we start thinking, maybe God meant I have to help too. Same thing with Abraham and Sarah, right? God said you'll have offspring. Maybe he meant with Hagar, right? Maybe he meant another person. Maybe he meant Ishmael. Then God said, no, 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 I was talking from Sarah's body. Oh, I didn't realize. So when you're outside of time, this is a concept that we can't fully understand. You see things all as a totality. You see someone's total life, any moment of the day they're living, you can see their entire life, past, present, and future. So when you're giving instructions, it's always interesting to me how people interpret God's instructions and they want to help, right? Like, oh, maybe God meant we should deceive him to take the blessing. How do we know what God would have meant between Abraham and Sarah? Because they took matters in their own hands and created Ishmael that created a whole lineage of people. You see what I'm saying? So Samson, where would Samson's life had been if he not chose the path that he did with Delilah? God never said to do that. He chose that. Matter of fact, his parents kept telling him, stop, don't marry those women. We're over here. So that's what you have to understand is God is outside of time, but we're in time. And if I tell you something's going to happen tomorrow, it's going to change how you act today. You're not going to say, well, I'm still going to continue my life, and what Ellis told me is already going to happen, so I'm going to let it happen. We start thinking, wow, if he said that, let me start either influencing that thing so it doesn't happen, or let me expedite that thing so it does happen. We try to get involved into the equation, and what that usually does is detour us. God is going to bring it back because God's will always will be done. But the path that we live is different. God give us in the New Testament promises all the time. But if we interpret those promises the wrong way or get involved and execute them wrong, it will affect our life. It's not going to affect God's promise, right? It's going to affect our life. We can look at an array of examples in the Bible. That's why I say all the time, when things are going bad in your life, you have to blame you. You are the only common denominator, right? If you say, man, I had a bad day at work and then I got into an argument at my house, who was the only person in both of those places? You. Instead, you say, man, my coworker is a jerk and my sister was being rude. But you were the only one all day having a bad day. Your coworker only got into one argument with you. Your sister only got into one argument with you. You're the only one who got into two arguments. First, you should turn the mirror to you and say, what did I do in this situation? But human beings don't think that way. We start looking at it as, let me start blaming somebody, like Sarah. Sarah started blaming who? Oh, look, this lady now has my husband. Now this little stupid kid thinks she's her real son. So let's get rid of her. Whose idea was that? Who came up with that plan? She did. And now lives are affected by it, but she doesn't want to take responsibility for it. So that happens to us all the time. We'll do something, we'll forget. Someone will say, hey, did you do that? Now you're upset that you forgot, and you're upset that the other person know you forgot. So now you want to start an argument. But I didn't forget that. You forgot that. Oh, yeah, I did. So that's the point here, right? God is outside of time. He's giving his divine prophecy to these people's lives to see how they are going to interact, because they have free will, meaning God is not going to force them to do certain things. That's the perfection of God, that he can have his will on the top, give you free will, but the two still have to have harmony. Now, that's a whole nother Bible study. People say, well, if Samson had free will, but you told him he had to destroy the Philistine, did he really have free will? God's perfection is he's never going to let things get out of control. Now, your life may be out of control, but that's your free will. But he's not going to let your life disrupt the free will of the world. Meaning, if I wake up tomorrow and say, hey, I want to kill every person on earth. Well, I may kill a lot of people, but something's going to stop me because what? That's not God's will. Well, how do you know? Well, God said that the world would be destroyed by fire. So who am I? If I destroy everyone, then it's me. What am I going to get hit by a meteor and then the world is over? Like, I may have my free will to do wrong, but it's not going to void God's eternal divine will. That's the dynamics between the two. Any questions?
This could have happened even if Rebecca did not lie. It would have happened like some way. Right?
Yeah, what if I don't know the dynamics of their relationship, right? But what if there was a conversation involved? Hey, God told me this thing. Isaac pray, hey, did you say this? Yeah, I said it's going to be this way. Okay, so who should we give blessing to? Maybe God said, oh, still bless Esau. I'll take care of it later. Or maybe God says you should bless Jacob. But once again, no one asked him. Abraham and Sarah, no one asked God. God had to bring angels to them and say, what are you doing? No one asked the source. And that's what happens in our life. We live our life a certain way. We make bad decisions, right? And God is sitting in heaven said, no one asked me what job you should have. Nobody asked me if you should go on vacation. Nobody asked me if you should buy a car. Nobody asked me if you should date or marry that person. Nobody is asking me, but I'm the one who's driving. You are on a detour. You're going right now the opposite direction. Now we have to try to get you back for your purpose and for my divine purpose. And that's what we need to see here. Never forget, when you're reading any story in the Old Testament, it's always going to come back to God's promise to Abraham, which is the promise he made to Adam and Eve and to Satan, that he was going to fix it. Their individual lives was only to fit into a master plan, which is salvation. Today, we are the same way. Stop looking at your life of what you're trying to do. Oh, when I die, I want to be able to say that your life is just a piece of a puzzle of a plan called salvation. That's the purpose, right? Solomon said your whole purpose is to fear God and keep his commandment. If you start looking at your life outside of its intended purpose, it's going to change how you live today. Meaning, if I didn't look at my life as a part of the plan of salvation today, I'm not coming to worship because I'm thinking it's cold out and I have another plan. It's the playoffs, NFL, and I want to see if the Colts going to beat the Broncos. Yeah, but that's not, yeah, but I want to see that. Yeah, but remember, your life is just a piece. Yeah, but you did that piece last week, and then next week I'll go. But today is game, and just one Sunday, what's the big deal? That's how we live our life. We rationalize the wrong we do because we go out of our design and our intended purpose. That's what is happening in each one of these stories because time is going by. You can't remember some promise somebody made to you 40 years ago. You just going to say, I forgot that thing. It's not going to mean that much until you bring it a part of your life. What? Every day. Until you live that promise every day, you're not going to fully accept and really let that promise motivate your life. Okay, next question, 22. What kind of man was Jacob, God's chosen at this point in time? How does his conduct suit his name? Okay, what does Jacob mean again? We're now go back to 25, what Denisha was reading. Go back to 25. You were at verse 23, right? And verse 26, what does that say?
Afterwards, his brother came out, and the skin took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore him.
And what does Jacob mean? Some Bibles may have like a little asterisk next to Jacob giving you the definition of his name. Deceitful one, right? So Jacob came out and they named him, and Esau said in chapter 27, what? Man, no wonder this kid's name was Jacob. This guy's a trickster. So he's living up to his name. So the question is, what kind of man was Jacob, God's chosen at this point? And this is interesting, right? How was Jacob here? Because if we think of Jacob as a totality, we're going to think of, oh, Jacob was the father of what? What do we usually say? Because Jacob's name was changed to what? Israel, right? Jacob had 12 sons and this, and he was the father of Israel. Israel's a chosen people. Yeah, that's what we do too. At the end of lives, we start saying, man, this person was so nice. But if somebody came and say, hey, no, that person wasn't, that person stole from me. Huh? When? Hey, 60 years ago. What? No way. This person, father of nations. No, he's not. He was a thief. Oh, man. Anybody know that? No, we didn't know that. Dad, you stole? See, that's the thing. Where was Jacob now? Don't tell me about Jacob in future chapters. What type of person was Jacob now? Jacob was a liar. See, here's the thing about us. We don't like to say when we lie, and we for sure don't like being called a liar or calling someone else a liar. But if you deceive somebody, you lie. If somebody said, hey, are you going to do this, or did you do this? And you said, yeah, I did that. And you know you didn't do it. That's called a lie. We don't want to say, no, I didn't. I just didn't tell the truth, because truth sounds better than lies. So if I say I didn't tell the truth, to your ears, it sounds better. But if you say, oh, I lied, you feel bad. Oh, I don't want to say I lied, because God told my mom that I was going to be the one to be serving. So I did what God wanted me to do. Did you lie? Did you deceive? Did you hold back the truth? Oh, yeah, I did. Did you bring God into it? Yeah, because he said only way he was able to get the food so fast because God gave him the food. But really, his mom cooked it. He did nothing, and he put the goat's hair on his body and was going in there. I wish we could have a picture of what Jacob looked like with goat hair on him in this suit, because Jacob and Esau was like night and day physically, right? So they didn't even look the same. So to paste goat hair, the skin of a goat, first of all, it probably smelled, and you're sitting there saying, yeah, I'm Esau with a little kid's voice, and Esau got a bass voice. And Isaac is like, what? How is this feeling like Esau, but sounding like Jacob? That is the type of person Jacob was at this time. Mm-hmm.
So from that time, the woman making course,
Mm-hmm.
she saw it or
Yep.
for him to
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that when he touched him, it felt like.
It felt and it smelled.
Mm-hmm.
Like the scent wasn't of the first.
Yeah. Everything was outside of him seeing. Everything was off for Isaac, right? Because he couldn't put one and one together. Like it felt like two sons in front of him at the same time. So that's the thing. The extent of the lie that they went to, the preparation that they went to, describes how they are at this point. That's important for a couple of reasons. One is God still chose him at this time, right? Think about that for a second, because God told Jeremiah he chose him in his mother's womb, right? God says that nations are formed inside of a woman's womb. Think of Paul. Think of God saying before Paul was born, I'm going to choose him. Think of angels saying, okay, yeah, let's see. Jesus is back with us, and God has a 13th apostle. Let me see. God say right there. Oh, okay, let's see. What? He killing people. Oh yeah, don't worry. He's still killing. Oh, don't worry. In a couple of years, he's going to be with us. Huh? He's kidnapping, imprisoning. Think about, right? They don't live outside of time. Angels is bound by the same thing we're bound to, right? They're under God's authority. Look, that's what I'm saying. God chooses people sometimes at their absolute worst and change them to take nothing and make something, right? That's very, very important to think about that. This boy David was outside playing with animals, and somebody came to him, skipped all his older brothers, and said, hey, you're going to be king. King of what? King of Israel. Nobody even knows my name. My father even forgot me, because when he asked for the sons, he didn't even come get me. Nobody even remembers me. God takes nothing and makes something, right? God took dust and then he formed man in his own image and breathed life into it, right? It didn't say he created other things that way. It said he created man that way. So that's how we have to look at it, as God chooses us sometimes at an undue time, right? Moses was orphanized, floating in a basket, and he what? Changed the world, right? So look at these things. So that's a good barometer for us to look at where Jacob was in God's relationship and choosing him before. Okay, 23. When you consider all you know about Jacob and Esau, why do you think God chose Jacob and not Esau to be the head of the family and the one through whom the promise of Abraham would be fulfilled? Now, that's a good question because God knows the totality. Now, in the situation with Esau and his wife, it said that he caused a grief to Isaac and Rebekah, right? And the carelessness of Esau with the birthright years before with the soup painted what picture of him? Think about a business, right? If Isaac had a business and Esau was doing this about the business, we would say that Esau what does care or doesn't care about the family business? Does not, right? And today that's how it is sometimes. Father have a restaurant successful, got 2 or 3 kids. Kids say what? Oh, I want to go be in a band. Father, what band? I don't know. I want to go play music. Oh, I want to go be a lawyer. Oh, I want to be a garbage man. And he's saying, but who? Oh, somebody got to run business. We don't want to run business. That's your life. We want our own life. Don't kids say that? We want our own way. Famous kids will be like, I want to make my own way because everyone keeps calling me by last name. They think of you. I don't want your legacy. I want my own legacy. So we'll say what? That kid don't care about family business. That kid wants to establish something new. The problem with this family was what? Their family business was whose business? God's business. So basically you're saying you don't care about God's business and God's divine will won't come back to him void. So Esau put himself outside of the picture because God is looking for people to stay within these confinements because he's going generationally to get to the end result. And Esau was putting himself outside of that. So that showed that he was careless and he didn't value God's promise or what would be what? His responsibility. Yes, he had no faith in God, right? Because Abraham is gone. So Abraham had to Isaac had to exhibit the same faith that Abraham had. When Isaac is gone, that would have to have been Esau. But Esau, from what we can see right now, doesn't look like he would have been doing that good of a job of carrying on the family legacy.
But this is why God planted him. Because he knew that Esau didn't want that responsibility. He knew that Esau wasn't the one to carry out his plan. But they take it in their hand to do what they want. Right. This is the reason why God did it from the beginning.
See, that's why today for us, sometimes in church, we spend so much time arguing over things that God could come down and say, but I never asked you to do that, nor am I going to let you do it. So why are you fighting? That's like someone is planning something and I don't have that talent, that ability. I have no experience at all to do that thing. And then I'm arguing with somebody who has a wealth of experience. Hey, I want to do that. So the person is, well, how you figure you can do? You don't have, no, I want to do it. Then you do it. And what happens? Oh, I messed it all up. God could walk in and say, what are you doing? Oh, I wanted to do that thing. I never asked you to do that. You have nothing in you to do that thing. So that's kind of like this situation, right? That God could be saying, Esau, it's not in you because of who? You live that way. I don't live that way. I'm up here. You're choosing that. What did God say to Cain? Why you look sad? Because if you had gave a better sacrifice like your brother, wouldn't I be happy? You chose to give me that tired sacrifice. Your brother chose to give a better way. So that's why for us, we always have to look at ourselves first, right? Look at the life that we have lived and continue to live, and it dictates how we act. We want people to interact with us how we see ourselves. Wrong. We as people can only interact with you as how we perceive you from interaction, meaning this. Some people will look at it and say, oh, I'm not a mean person. I'm not a mean person. I love everybody, right? And then we talk to 100 people, be like, "Ooh, child, please." When I see that person, I run the other way. You trying to convince me I just met you. I'm not mean, and I'm looking behind you, and everybody going like this. No, no, know what it really means. Your perception of yourself is skewed. Esau had a skewed perception of himself because he thought when it was time for the blessing, he should have got it. But he should have told his dad, I can't take this blessing. His dad would have said, why? Because I sold my birthright for soup. His dad would have said, what? You sold the plan of God for a bowl of soup? Yes, I was hungry. And I told him, if I die, what good is a birthright? And what would maybe Isaac have done? Well, I can't give to you. You're not worthy. I got to give to your brother now. But he looked at himself differently. We do that. We know the wrong we do. We know the inadequacies that we have, right? We know we don't study our Bible enough or read or prepare. And somebody asks us something and we know we should say what? No, I can't do that. But we get excited. Ooh, they asked me. Ooh, that's nice. I'm going to do something. And then you do it and it's horrible. Then you say, man, why you asked me to do that? You knew I couldn't do that. No. You should blame yourself. Start with you first. So this is a good indication of the interaction of these individuals' lives this way. Any comments?
Yes. Use that as an excuse to get out of working in the kingdom and doing God's business. Like, I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. So they just use that as an excuse. Yeah,
they could use it as an excuse. But God knows. Like, you could use that as an excuse, but God knows. Meaning this, everyone has to do something. Even in our church this year, we have to do better at this. 12 months go by, every single baptized believer needs to be doing something. Think about this for a second. You're going to go to God and God's going to say you were a Christian for 10 years, right? So if we look at, let's look at this concept. So to say I can't do it. 10 years, 520 Sundays, 120 months. God gonna go up and say, hey, look, because I know you forgot. Here go all the days. All the Wednesdays, all the Sundays, this, right? Let's start. You're gonna say, like Kathy said, oh, I couldn't do it. And I was at a Bible study. Ellis was saying, evaluate yourself. He said, okay, I give you that. Let me skip these 52 Sundays. Now this 2014. No, remember I was still thinking about the Bible study Ellis said. Okay, let's skip that. 2015. No, I still couldn't do it. Okay. Now we did 10 years. So what did you do? I sat in my pew. I gave my money and took Lord's Supper. So he's going to say for 520 weeks, that's all you can do? Yes, that's the best I can do. Do we live like that for school? Do we live like that for work? No, right? Because if your boss asks you something 520 times, what's going to happen to you? You're going to be out in the unemployment line. If you passing 520 times, you're going to be what? 40 years old in the first grade. That's just the life that we live in. But for spiritual things, we are either going to what? See ourselves not correctly, or like Kathy said, go to the extreme and keep saying, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. That's the point of Hebrews. Hebrew author said, you should be eating solid food by now, but you're still drinking milk like baby. So for us, it's important for us to be on a growth trajectory, right? Like, where is our growth path? That's why we were talking about goals last 2 Wednesdays ago and last Sunday. This week, same thing. What are your goals? If you weren't there on Wednesday, you need to write a goal down so we can add it to the list of goals. What is your goal? You can't possibly tell me that you and God have a relationship and you have no goal for this year. Nothing, no thing you see in yourself that you can say, hey, God, I'm going to work on this to be better. That's what we should be looking to ourselves. That's how God is perceiving our words and our actions, right? He's looking at it as like, I had my son bleed out for 6+ hours and you couldn't think of one thing that you do, not that we do, that you do that you could stop doing. Nothing. We say, no, I couldn't think of nothing. Ellis was talking about a goal. I was thinking for 2 weeks. I don't have no goal. No goal. No, what? I don't think of it that. It's like a marriage. and you go to a counselor and say, hey, write down what each person do. Other person was like, oh, I don't have nothing I do, but I have a book of what the other person. And the counselor going to say, you couldn't think of one thing you do? No, because this matter, only thing bad things I do is only as a result is what she do. See, we look at ourselves the wrong way. Our goal should be the size of the Bible, and we should have to window them down to one. You should have things in your mind that you know for a fact that you do, not that they do. You do that you know, you feel in your heart, man, I ask for forgiveness for this thing all the time. Let that be your goal, because you have to change the things in your life every day to be better. We live this way. Hey, every day I'm a Christian. When I die, I'm going to go to heaven. Okay, stop. Because the point of your life while you're being a Christian is to be a better Christian. When you go to school in kindergarten, the point is not to just attend school until the 12th grade. It's to do better. You came in not knowing how to tie your shoe, so we're not going to let you go until you know. You came in first grade not able to do some basic math. You cannot go to second grade until you know. So why don't we live that way spiritually? We live by the No Child Left Behind Act spiritually. The next year go around, hey, come on, all of us, we got to go. We're in the next year. Some of us is in 2007. No, I'm in 2015. God's saying, no, you're not. Spiritually, you still back there. You stayed back. That's how we need to look at ourselves. We need to be more goal driven. If these people were goal driven, it would have changed their relationships, right? It would have changed their everyday acting. That's why you see a big difference between the way Abraham was and the way Esau was, right? Because Esau is Abraham's lineage. One was goal driven, right? One was trying his best. Look at David. David was a man after God's own heart. He was trying. That's what God is saying. At least you could be like David. He was a murderer, and he still was after my heart because he tried. We haven't killed nobody but our own selves. God is saying, you didn't even kill anyone. You don't try. These people killed people and they tried. You're not trying. That's how we should look at ourselves, right? God is in the trying business. Just keep your hand on the plow. Don't take your hand off, but you have to better yourself. Use these stories and look at them and say, wow, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I would have did the same thing. Number one, because I would have forgot. I mean, I forget whatever is the sermon on Sunday. Monday, I probably doing the opposite of what the sermon say. You know, I would have forgot a promise 40 years ago. So how can I use this story to change how I live? Oh, let me look at some things that they didn't do, and maybe I add those into my life. That's the purpose of Bible study, not to just take notes, not to fill out this book, or just remember the story of Jacob and Esau. The kids know that story. Our purpose is to take these things and apply it to our lives to help each and every one of us get better, so that we're better today than tomorrow. So look at these things, study these things. Next class, we'll move on because there's not much here in terms of Jacob being sent away. We'll touch on that briefly. So next month, we'll look at Jacob and his family. So answer 24, 25, 26 for next month's class. But also, if you could answer the first 5 questions of lesson 8 as well. All right. Anyone have any books? Thank you.